IVM.
Hi,
You're
listening to IVM.
daily.
Hello and welcome to another episode of IVM Daily, and I'm Priyanka and I have with me Janam.
Hi.
So IVM Daily is basically a show where all the IVM staff comes together or doesn't come together on particular topics or anything that's trending or happening in and around us. So today I'm going to be picking on something that is rather grave, something that unfortunately as women we have to deal with because of our genders, and that's sexual harassment in public places. But the focus is obviously on the questions we ask on how we deal with these things, how much do we know about dealing with these things. Of course, it's wrong to sort of anticipate that something like this is going to happen. It's really unfortunate. They shouldn't at all. Yeah, so Janam, when the last time something happened to you, what was it and how did you see yourself like dealing with it or approaching it? Or
So, I feel as women, we face this pretty often, and
Yeah.
it's really sad that we do because, we've reached a point where we've kind of become used to it now. Because if it happens, I mean, at least I just ignore it. Because, we've all been like catcalled and
Eve Deans
yeah. Or like, you're in a public at the station, at a crowded station, and men just like brush against you and pretend it happened by mistake, but it was clearly intentional. And, they just walk by and then you don't even know what to do because you're in public and you also have to get somewhere on time. So you don't have the time to actually get mad at that person.
Right.
So I just feel like it makes me super, obviously it's very unpleasant, it's very uncomfortable, it's very, you feel very violated.
Right.
And I just wish that this wouldn't happen at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are called out for help, or do you think like at these public places having, what do you think is missing for the sake of your safety? Like what's that one thing that, so also as kids, whenever we travel through public transport, most of us always had our parents around us, when you use the train, at least initially.
Yeah.
But when, when you grew up, obviously going to college, coming back, your parents think that you're fine on your own.
Yeah.
Also, in a crowded station, no matter who you're with, that person can miss what's happening to you. So, having like these, I don't know, more tables of women constables sitting there, or do we know that I can run to somewhere to file an FIR, or if my station has the facility for me to be able to do that, okay, and all girls, do we know such things? So why I'm bringing this up is because we've recently launched the podcast called Know Your Kanon, where it's about asking the right questions, just knowing what we are supposed to know, or little things can really make a difference. For example, have you heard of something called as the zero FIR, which means you should not take bullshit of anyone saying that if you're from this locality you can file an FIR only here if things get really bad, and anything that violates you, as you said, right?
Yeah.
And again, questions like what is sexual harassment in a public place according to you? If someone just brushes past by you, you'll say that, oh, this is not cool.
I think it's anything that makes the person uncomfortable, right from like touching, any form of physical contact, or, passing lewd comments, or anything that makes a girl uncomfortable would classify as sexual harassment.
Yeah. And also the things like, what's the worst case that, you probably had to involve authorities or like people outside of your parents? Is there something that you sort of...
Fortunately, I haven't been in that kind of a situation, but I do remember this one incident when I was 16 and I was taking the bus from home to school, and I was sitting near the window, and the bus was like fairly empty. This was a BST bus, and it was fairly like empty. There weren't many people, and this man came and sat behind me, and he was reading, or at least pretending to read, the newspaper. and his arms were stretched out, so that means like, his arms were like very close to my back,
Yeah.
and I actually felt a hand groping my breasts, and
From behind.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, God.
from the like from near the edge of the window. And before I could even realize what was happening, the man got up, and like the bus stopped, and he just got up and got off
And
at
he
the
left.
next stop. And
Yeah.
before I could even call the conductor or tell anyone about this, I don't remember seeing any woman in the bus. But before I even registered what was happening to me, the man just got off and left. And since that incident, every time I've sat in a bus after that, every time I'm near the window seat, I'm very cautious, or I keep a bag to block the way or something. Like, it's just been very scarring, that incident.
Right.
And I remember there was this other incident where I was helpless. Like, there's certain situations where you can't even do anything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you never know. Like, we may not be able to use the information we have because
Yeah.
it just doesn't come to you. That
Yeah,
moment.
and the person just like goes past. I remember this one time I was in a rickshaw, and the signal was there. I was with two of my friends, and I was sitting at the edge of the seat, and a man walked by, and he just touched my lap and went. So it was just like, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And I can't even, like, before I looked who it was, the rickshaw started, the signal started, and I had to leave. So, I mean, all these incidents are just, it just makes me wonder, like, why are men doing all this? What's about women being in public that makes them so, like,
Vulnerable
uncontrollable?
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And give you the authority to
Yeah.
go off. Yeah, that's also because they think that they can get away, right? And that's also like the second big part is that do they take these punishments or laws or rules seriously? Like, this is a redundant question, but because they don't know enough and we don't know better, as even, being at the other end of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this will always be something that's grave, and I think we also spoke about this in one of our IVM dailies, that India is the most unsafe country in the world for women.
Is that statistically proven?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, my
okay,
God.
and it's just not like I don't know how it beats places like Pakistan or something. Okay, yeah, so basically there's this report sometime in June this year saying that this poll was done by Thomson Reuters Foundation, and it basically says that India has topped the list of the most dangerous countries for women, and thanks to widespread sexual violence, all sorts of like cultural practices and trafficking, all of that in account. And so in 2011, Afghanistan had topped that list.
Okay.
And then India was on the fourth place. Today, India has overtaken Afghanistan, and then followed by Syria, Somalia, and Saudi. So this is why we need to be like, I mean, of course, as you said, right, these things don't come to us when the instances happen, but if you're with someone or a fellow woman or whoever, do we really ask the right questions? Also, how do our family members react? How what is it that they should know? What are the helpline numbers? What is it that will empower the situation and not make it worse?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we are to find out on the Know Your Kanun podcast, which is out every Wednesday. And
the podcast is actually great. I've checked out a few episodes myself, and I would say it's super helpful. Every woman should actually listen to it and know what her rights are. And so what about you, Priyanka? What have your experiences been in public?
I mean, of course, see, the list is really long, and but I remember, so nothing. I remember outside Jain College, was Churchgate Station in Bombay, in town as we call it, and I was coming back from a college festival because that's like the most happening thing in our lives then, and I was coming back, and I remember someone like, sort of calling me a female, like a prostitute in Hindi.
Oh my
and
God.
So it took me a few seconds to realize what this guy said, and both of us were walking the opposite direction, and I was just crossing over to go to the station.
And you were alone by yourself?
Yeah,
at
I
this
was
time?
alone.
Okay.
For some reason I was alone. I was just going back, and but I remember by the time I just turned back And I abused this guy because that's when I realized that, because the reason why I yelled out was because I realized that nobody on the road gives two fucks. Like, everybody's doing their thing.
Yeah.
And unless you raise a voice, no one's gonna ever, he could have said worse things. He could have probably even touched me or pinched me and no one would have cared. And then because I abused him, this guy came and, he said that, did this guy do something to you? And I said, yes. And before we knew it, that guy had walked off. So that's the thing. They pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And things like, as a kid also, again, the whole good touch and the bad touch, right? Like, you're playing in your building and then there are all these, workers, construction workers and barbers in the building. And I remember that I had so there's this barber who was going on the first floor and I live on the third floor, and he noticed me some days ago because he was someone who used to come often to that house and to the building, and he was basically around the vicinity, so quite a familiar face. And so I was going up to my house and I was playing in the building, and this guy grabbed me to kiss my cheek, and it's disgusting.
Oh God.
But I don't know, like, as a kid also, I just went and told my mom that this guy did this to me and I think it's not okay. Like, I was like 10 years old or something. And yeah, she got that. She made sure this guy never came back to our building, and like she confronted him. And yeah, so I think like we have to, we can't sit feeling bad that like, why did this happen to ourselves? Because again, it's not you who should be. They are the ones who are doing wrong. So I've always tried to like, even, I think there's this quote that says that even if you have a shaky voice, don't let that come in the way from screaming. So I feel like you should just always raise a voice. Yeah, if you're crying or whatever it is, just because at that moment, to tackle that thing is pretty crucial. Yeah. Which is also one of the very major questions, that the more time you let go of after the incident, it sort of is not in your favor when you file a complaint. Okay. Right. Because, there are witnesses that can get hampered, and like the whole authenticity, or for all you know, the offender can flee or not be around, and then it's just a chase. Yeah. So there are these things that you that just make you aware, because as a kid I didn't want to stop playing because one whatever person just wanted to ruin it for me or have his pervert thoughts for a kid who's like barely 10 years old. And I remember that I was trying to run from him, but there's a chewing gum that got stuck on my zipper, and I was like hell shit, but it was just really sad. But yeah, there are we just have to ask the right questions and
know the right answers to those questions.
Yeah, I mean, we may know the situation for ourselves, but you should just put it to notice and not be scared. Yeah. So this is not to have like a grim note and like be sad, and it's just about like being as empowered as possible. So thank you, Janam, for accompanying me on this episode.
Thanks, Priyanka, for all the knowledge, and for the podcast also, actually, Know Your Kanun, I would definitely recommend it to all our listeners, because after listening to it, I feel like there were certain situations I was in where I could have done something, but I did not at the time. But now I definitely feel more empowered to face those.
Right. So if you want to tweet or write to us, we are on all social media at IVM Podcast, and you can reach out to me at Priyanka1091 on Twitter, and Janam,
you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Janam Devan.
Yes, so that was it for today's episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right. We interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, The Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar, and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.
Some time ago, 5 successful restaurateurs came together to form the Colaba Cartel. The founders of the table, Gauri Devi Dayal and Jay Yusuf, partnered with the founders of Woodside Inn, Abhishek Honawar, Pankil Shah, and Sumit Gambhir to open a new restaurant in Colaba. If you've ever dreamed of opening a restaurant or love eating out, you want to listen in. The Colaba Cartel. This exclusive 10-part series is hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal and Amit Doshi. Catch new episodes of the Colaba Cartel every Monday and Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.